Angelica Sinitsky, Spurb.
Okay, well, thank you very much for joining us for 76th episode of Spurb's Herbs. Today we're doing a herb of the world, Indian Frankincense, also known as Boswellia serrata. I, as always, am your presenter, Dr. Greg Sperber, and without further ado, let's figure out what we're doing today. So today's episode, we'll be looking at another traditional herb of the world, Indian frankincense. As always, we will do our deep dive into this herb and look at its traditional uses. Does it have any Chinese medical functions? And its preparation, interactions, and cautions. And as usual, we will be adding something a little different. Well, actually, maybe a lot different. As herbalists and practitioners in general, whatever we're practicing, we run businesses, and writing a business plan is the most important thing to do to ensure or continue success. So we're going to look at business planning excuses. It's going to be another interesting sojourn into the depths of herbdom. Please keep listening. Before we get into all that, I just wanted to let you know, you probably know this, I've been teaching for quite a while now. It's going on, almost 25, 30 years on a wide variety of topics. If you like this podcast and want to explore more of my courses, they are available at www.integrativemedicinecouncil.org. That's Integrative Medicine Council, COUNCIL.org, and include a ton of different topics, including my drug herb series, looking at drugs and how they interact with herbs and vice versa, several ethics and safety courses, Chinese medical research, several treatment of condition courses, such as arthritis, conditions courses, such as arthritis, neck and back pain, COVID, and depression, anxiety. Those are just examples. I have a lot more of them than that. And one of my favorite courses, the Chinese Herbal First Aid Kit. This is a fascinating one. This is all stuff that you can buy off the shelf and have around in your house just in case something goes wrong. It's fantastic. It's a great course. And they're all at a reasonable cost normally, and you can get an additional 20% off with the code SH20OFF. So it's SH for Spurb's Herbs, the number 20, and off, OFF, so 20 off. And you get 20% off with that code. Hope to see you soon. Thanks. So let's talk about business planning excuses. This is from an article I wrote for the California Journal of Oriental Medicine, now known as the Journal of Acupuncture and Integrative Medicine. And it kind of goes in and assumes that we understand to a certain extent why business planning is important. Study after study has shown that if there's one thing people who are building a business do to increase their chances of success is to write a business plan. Now, there's this informal number out there, and I'm being honest with you, I tried to find it, so I could not find it, but you hear about it everywhere. 1 out of 5 businesses will go out of business. I've heard in the first year, I've heard in the first 5 years, whatever it is, but 1 out of 5, that's a lot of failure. And so what can you do to make it better? Of course, business plan. But there's lots of excuses to prevent yourself from business planning. So let's talk about that. So business planning is one of the most neglected aspects of running a business, and yet study after study has shown that there's no better predictor of success or failure. Those businesses with a business plan have a much higher probability of success than those without one. So why doesn't every new or existing acupuncturist or herbalist or practitioner have a business plan? And there are many reasons for this. One of the biggest reasons is time. There's never enough time to develop a business plan. As a student, you have to spend your time writing that paper or studying for that upcoming test. As a practitioner, you have all that paperwork and you need to spend time with your current patients and getting new ones. And let's not forget the demands of family and significant others. But, and this is a big but, nothing has been shown to have as big an impact on your business. So can't you take a weekend or an hour here and there, a few times a week, and make writing down a few parts of a plan the most important priority, especially for your future, a few weeks of steady work can yield a passable business plan. It doesn't have to be a work of art, it just has to be passable. That reminds me, there's an old joke, and we would say it in medical school to our students. When I was in medical school, between the students, we'd say, what do they call the person who is dead last in class? And the answer is doctor. As long as they pass, they're a doctor. So, and believe me, there are a few I wish weren't. But moving on. So, the point is that a few weeks of steady work can yield a passable business plan. That's the goal, not a perfect business plan. You're not going out and, hopefully you might be, but you're not going out and trying to get venture capital. It doesn't have to be a top-notch business plan. It just needs to be something that's guiding you. So other hurdles to the development of a business plan are psychological hurdles. One often posited by students is, I'm not much of a planner. I just wing most things in my life. And they usually do okay with that, but they can do better. This lament usually means they are afraid to commit to anything because they may fail. Fear of failure is incredibly common. Isn't it ironic that the one thing they can do to minimize the occurrence of failure is something they are afraid of undertaking because it might highlight or demonstrate their failure? The best antidote to this is to think of a business plan as a rough outline. It can be huge. It can be small. It can be very formal or on the back of a napkin. It can be anything as long as it is written down. Make it a work of art. Just include some concrete information. In other words, make it part of conquering your fear of failure, not a concrete example of it. Another psychological hurdle is the fear of money. I think this is really common in all of our professions. We'd rather help people than worry about the money aspects of things. But that is the beauty of a business plan. It can be about anything you would like. Is travel more important than money? Great, make it part of your plan. Is your practice about being able to work part-time, add a little income, and be able to spend as much time as possible with the kids? Great, put it in the plan. While money needs to be discussed in most business plans, it doesn't need to be the main issue. A small business's business plan is as much a life plan for the owner as it is a business plan. Sometimes, practitioners who have been in business for a few years or longer feel like they don't need a business plan. Hogwash. I just like the word hogwash, so I threw it in there. While they may be quite successful, there are always ways to streamline and make your business more efficient, more profitable, and less time-consuming. And these ideas and goals often come from a good business plan. Do you want to buy the building your practice is in? What about spend more time on vacation or on a hobby? Plan for it. One of the best reasons, quote unquote, for not doing a business plan is the I don't have enough business knowledge excuse. So when are you going to learn business? When you have a lease and overhead to worry about? When you can't sleep at night because you don't have enough patience? And believe me, I've consulted with several of those acupuncturists, desperate. I love one of them. He was desperate, and he took me out for lunch, just wanted to pick my brain. I was happy to help him. He wasn't a student of mine. I taught this in school, so a lot of them were students. This was someone who came before I was teaching and just wanted some advice, and I gave him some advice. I don't know what he took. I don't know what he didn't take. All I know is it's been a long time later, and he's very successful. So, you can be very successful in these things. The best way to learn about business is to create a business plan. A good business plan will take you through all the necessary knowledge to run a good practice. Just get a good book on business planning. The question is, would you rather learn about business when your money is on the line and you are scrambling to get patients and pay the bills, or before, when you can take your time and learn basic business concepts? The reality is, you're going to need to know these concepts if your practice is going to be successful. You have little control over that fact, but you do control how you learn these concepts. And believe me, a lot of people learn them by mistakes. So they do something wrong, they have enough wherewithal to be able to correct. First of all, they're open enough to the correction. Second of all, they have enough resources to weather the downside, and then they can learn from their mistakes. But That's a lot. And we all are going to do that. If you're in business, you're going to make mistakes and things are going to go wrong. But when you have a business plan, those mistakes hopefully don't go as wrong as bad as they could be. If you have a business plan, it can mitigate that. I have a comment here from Maja. Says, thanks for reminding us. We had a business plan writing class in acupuncture school at AIMC Berkeley. Me and my partner are currently expanding our acupuncture clinic in Oakland, and it is hard to find time to write a new plan. I'll write some works of art on a napkin in between patient CU classes and taxes. Thank you again for reminding us. You know, one of the things when I used to teach this, so I made a business plan the center of how I taught practice management when I taught practice management for many, many years. And because of the business plan, a lot of reading, a lot of grading. So I always had an assistant in that class. One of my assistants had an MBA, which I do as well. And she was wonderful. She was very successful in her practices. And she would start a practice, build it up, do really well, and then kind of move and have to restart it. And she did well in all of those. And one of the things she'd always say to the students at the beginning of this class is like, look, every time I am in this class, I learn something new. And I think more than learn something new, it's more like reminded of something old. And that, every time I teach this stuff, I'm reminded of something I should be doing that I'm not doing, or I should be doing better. Almost every time I teach a course, I do that. It's not that I don't know it, it's that I just need a reminder. So this is great. Thank you, Maja. I appreciate that feedback. So other hurdles of starting to write a business plan include the I am not a good writer excuse. Well, that's okay. You can make it so only you are going to see it. Or make this an excuse to get another's input on the plan. That's a great idea, by the way, is get other people to give you some input on the plan. People hopefully know a little something about business, especially the business you're going in, like herbs or acupuncture or doing medicine of some sort. Another fear that often comes up is the fear of undertaking a huge project. In this case, think of it as a small project. Make it your goal to do a 3 or 5 page business plan rather than a 50-page one. You can always add to it if you want to. Or if your heart is set on a thorough business plan, chunk it down into smaller parts. Do the company plan, a page or 2, then do the technology plan, another page or 2, then the marketing plan. Just chunk it down. Before you know it, you will have a large and thorough plan, if that's what you want. One of the best ways overall to motivate one into doing a plan is to do it with someone else. If you have a partner or partners, build it together. If you don't have partners, do it with a classmate or colleague. You don't have to share info if you don't want, but getting together for a few hours a week or keeping each other on a schedule is invaluable. Find a business coach that will help keep you motivated. Go to SCORE, this is in the US, the Service Corps of Retired Executives, organization like it who have free services to help. Now there's lots of consultants that will help. Some of them I'm sure are very good. A lot of them, they're in the business of selling their services, not necessarily providing them. So you got to be careful if you're going to, and they can be very expensive. I'd much rather you can find better, the Service Corps of Retired Executives. These are people who know what they're doing, who have done it, can really help you in your process, especially if you're lacking some of the basic business information. They're fantastic. And there's other free services out there to help you as well. So look for the free before you start paying the astronomical. The only caveat is that you are really the only person who can write your business plan. So that's the one thing I never recommend, is that you actually pay for someone else to write your business plan, because paying someone else to write it means that you will probably not understand it and won't implement it. You've got to write it. That's the process that counts. It's not the business plan. Now, if you're going for big venture capital and all that sort of stuff, you want to make it nice and slick, okay, maybe pay someone to polish it. I wouldn't have them write it still, but to make it that way. But most of us aren't going to be doing that. So don't pay someone to write a business plan. It's expensive and it's useless. It really is. I've never seen someone else write a business plan and then have it actually implemented. There are those practitioners who didn't have a business plan and have wildly successful practices and who think planning is completely unnecessary. There are always a few of these people around, and this author salutes them. Well, it's not easy to do that. There are always exceptions to the rules and exceptions to some of the statements in this article. But for the vast majority of people, the concepts espoused here and the necessity of a business plan are immutable. Think of the successful non-planners as the exceptions that prove the rule. Don't put them up as role models. Just look at them as the outliers that they actually are. So this was about getting over those hurdles that may prevent us from starting to write a business plan. So don't hesitate, just do it. Don't make it a big deal. It will, there's a big movement, a few years ago, there was a big movement of the one-page business plan. How nice is that? One-page business plan. So it doesn't have to be super mega magnificent, but it does get some stuff down on a piece of paper and helps you do your business better. It will help you become more successful in any endeavor. I'll tell you what, going through the business planning process, you learn so much and you learn how things work. If you never implement that plan, I cannot tell you how many business plans I've made and not actually implemented. And I have learned so much from doing the business plans. So I don't have any problems. I don't feel like it's a waste of time or anything like that. It's fantastic. So with that little or not so little something different, let's get into today's herb. So today's herb is Boswellia serrata, or Indian frankincense. If you watch Young Frankenstein, if you haven't watched Young Frankenstein, excuse me, you should watch it. It's classic. So I want to start by discussing this herb in relation to Chinese medicine. Boswellia serrata is an important Indian Ayurvedic herb, and we will discuss its role in that medical system a lot today. While starting my research on this herb, it is often confused, combined, or even just substituted for the Chinese herb Ruxiang, or Boswellia cardii, BMNW, which is initials for the botanist who categorized it. These are not the same herb or species. In fact, Boswellia serrata is not listed as an alternative species for Ruxiang at all, though sometimes Ruxiang or technically Boswellia carterii I have seen as an alternative species for, or at least a substitute for Boswellia serrata. So they're similar. Having said that, they do have similar constituents and functions and probably could be used close to interchangeably, at least from a modern medical perspective. Not necessarily from a traditional perspective, but from its modern medical functional perspective. The bottom line is these are similar, but not the same species. So let's dive into Boswellia serrata. Comes from the family Burseraceae, and the species is Boswellia serrata Roxb X col Br. So ROXB period X COLLEBR period. Now that Roxb X coliber is those are like I said, those are abbreviations of botanist names that actually categorize this, and you can find a list of what the acronym or what the shortened version is to the actual botanist. So those are available. You can just put it into Google or into the Google machine and come up with that. So the medicinal part, generally, especially when we're talking frankincense, the medicinal part we're looking at is the resin under the bark. But the bark itself also has medicinal properties, and we'll talk a little bit about that as well. So other names for this is Boswellia, Boswellin serrata resin. So as soon as you say Boswellin, I'm a little bit worried about confusing it with Boswellia cardii, which is the other type of so this is Indian frankincense. The Boswellia cardii, I believe, is just frankincense, is regular frankincense, at least from our perspective in the West. And so, as soon as you say it generally like Boswellin, there can be some confusion. So Boswellin serrata resin sounds good. There's a lot of Hindu and Indian names. We have Gaja Bakshai. Again, please forgive my pronunciation. It's also sometimes just called incense tree or Indian olibinum. Olibinum is basically resin sort of thing. It's also Salai Google, one's with an AL, one's with a UL. Salakai Google, Shalakai, Susrava, Subaha, Surabi, Maharuna, Kundruki, and Valakai or Valaki. Again, I don't know the pronunciations of these. So let's talk a little bit about the Burseraceae family. The Burseraceae family is also known as the frankincense and myrrh family. So those are often combined in the Bible. Frankincense and myrrh were gifts given to the parents of Jesus. So frankincense and myrrh family, torchwood family, or incense tree family. So lots of different names, and includes shrubs and trees. They contain 17 to 19 genera and around 540 species. The reason why I always like to be a little inexact with these genera and species is every source I look at has slightly different numbers in this. And part of it is they may be 100% accurate when they wrote it, but this stuff changes. My understanding is fairly commonly within a couple of years, these things change all around and different genera go into different families. It can be very confusing. So that's why I'm like, contains 17 to 19 genera and around 540 species, and are native to Africa, Asia, Australasia, and the Americas. And they tend to be associated with tropical areas. I have a question from Ralph. Is this the most used, most famous frankincense? It is not. That I believe that's Rushiang. That's the frankincense cardii. There are other species too of Boswellia. But this one in particular is generally very commonly used. We're going to see it's a very important Ayurvedic herb, but it is not the common frankincense. So back to the Burseraceae family, their distinctive characteristics are they're generally non-allergenic resin they produce in virtually all plant tissue, and their distinctive, smooth, yet flaking aromatic bark. History of this herb. So according to Siddiqui, which was a good review article on this specific herb, Boswellia serrata, was first mentioned in two of the most ancient Ayurvedic texts, the Charaka Samhita, or a compendium of Charaka, and Sushruta Samhita, Sushruto's compendium. The Charaka Samhita was said to be written somewhere between the 4th century BCE and the 2nd century CE. When you see something that long, 600 years, what that probably means is that someone, it may be a compilation, it may be several authors over those centuries, so it's a little bit hard to be exact. And we see that a lot in Western literature too, is it can take a while. Like, for example, the Hippocratic corpus, Hippocrates, was written over a long period of time, longer than Hippocrates was alive, and was probably contributed to by a lot of his students. So, we don't know exactly. So that's the Charaka Samhita from the 4th century BC to the 2nd century CE. The Sushruta Samhita was compiled somewhere between the last couple of centuries BCE to the first couple CE. So again, up to 400 years or so. Siddiqui dates these two books to 700 and 600 BCE respectively, though that seems to be a little extreme in its dating and was not supported by other sources. When I looked at other sources, I usually got much more close to like 1st and 2nd century CE, with a couple of them saying a few hundred centuries before. So nothing 600 or 700 BCE. Way too long. Traditional uses. So this is primarily an Ayurvedic herb, and therefore we'll be referring to some specific properties we have discussed in previous episodes, specifically in episode 8, where we discussed ashwagandha, and episode 23, when we looked at triphala, both of which, of course, are important Indian herbs. We've done other Indian herbs as well, but we kind of went into those basic properties in those two episodes. Boswellia serrata's basic Ayurvedic properties include its rasa or taste is kashaya or astringent, tikta or bitter, and madir or sweet. Again, please forgive my pronunciations. Guna or qualities include lagu or light and ruksha or dry. The virya or energy is ushna or hot. The vipaka or post-digestive effect is katu or pungent. And the dasha or constitution is that it balances both kapha and pitta. And these are according to Sodhi. I have a few textbooks that I use for Ayurvedic medicine. Sodhi is Ayurvedic Herbs is the name of the book, and it's a little bit more modern, but it seems to be a good source. The website www.easyayurveda.com says the resin of this herb is used for jwara or fever, sweta or excess sweating, graha or lakshmi for psychological disorders, and mukaraga or oral disorders. They continue and refer to several texts and their uses of this herb, and they use the traditional term salakai here. According to Charaka Samhita, remember that's one of the books that this was first mentioned in, salakai is explained in part written by Dradalabala. He has categorized it as Shirovirachiniya, or cleansing nasal therapy, which makes sense. It's a very, it's used as incense. It's a very aromatic herb. And also Puri Shivajiniya, or detoxifying stool and restoring the natural color of stools. So helpful for stools. According to Sushruta Samhita, Sushruta has cited it as stambana, i.e. anti-diarrheal. He has mentioned its use in cough, asthma, blood and stool, pain in the region of the bladder, etc. There were a few other things they mentioned as well. According to Astanga Hridaya, which is also a very famous and older medical book in Ayurvedic medicine, salakai can be used in rudu kind of smoke. So rudu actually refers to smoke, basically fumigation. For shaman type of dhumapana, which is inhalation of smoke and fumes, and also in ulcers after suturing. Shardala has said that salakai can be used in diabetes and pain in Vrashana, Vrashana, I don't know what that refers to. Bhava Mishra in Bhava Prakash Nigantu has mentioned uses therapeutically in chronic and deep wounds. Is Gandamala, Granthi, Sandivata, Asthis Hosham, rickets, and in foul breath. According to Priya Nigantu, salakai is used especially in yoni roga, or vagina disorders, and dupanartha, or fumigation. So it's used in fumigation smoke. Again, incense makes sense. Siddiqui says, in addition to its beneficial use for arthritis, this gummy resin is also mentioned in traditional Ayurvedic and Unani texts as an effective remedy for diarrhea, dysentery, ringworm, boils, fevers, antipyretic, skin and blood diseases, cardiovascular diseases, mouth sores, bad throat, bronchitis, asthma, cough, vaginal discharges, hair loss, jaundice, hemorrhoids, syphilitic diseases, irregular menses, and stimulation of liver. It is also diaphoretic, meaning it causes sweating, astringent, diuretic, causes urination, and acts both as internal and external stimulant. So it is a stimulant as well. In the Yoga of Herbs, an Ayurvedic Guide to Herbal Medicine by Frawley and Ladd, it says this is a resin related to Google or frankincense. So Google frankincense is the more traditional frankincense that we know, and myrrh. So it is a resin related to Google and myrrh, both of which are in the same family, and used for similar purposes of cleansing the blood and countering arthritic pain. That's what I hear over and over again, is that arthritic pain. We're going to see that again in just a minute. It also aids in the healing of soft tissue injuries. Its cooling nature makes it particularly good for inflamed and swollen joints when there is some pitta involvement. Sodhi, again, that's the Ayurvedic Herbs textbook. So Sodhi simply states, Boswellia serrata, or salai, is one of Ayurveda's most potent anti-inflammatory herbs, used both externally and internally to treat rheumatoid arthritis, back pain, fibrositis, and osteoarthritis. So really useful as an anti-inflammatory. While we have focused on the resin of Boswellia serrata, its bark is also used medicinally. According to that website, www.easyayurveda.com, the bark is pushtikrut, improves nourishment, and grahi, absorbent and useful in diarrhea and IBS, irritable bowel syndrome. It can be used for the following: adasara, diarrhea and dysentery; rakta pitta, bleeding disorders such as nasal bleeding, heavy periods, etc.; vrana, ulcers and wounds; kushta, known to cure skin diseases; asra, blood disorders such as abscesses; skin disorders, bleeding disorders such as menorrhagia, nasal bleeding, etc. Arsha for hemorrhoids; Vernado Shahara cleanses wounds; and Shula for pain. That's pain. Dosage and preparation. www.easyayurveda.com states that the dosage is 50 to 100 milliliters of bark decoction and 1 to 3 grams of the gum. Now, not a huge fan of bark decoction as an explanation here because it doesn't tell us how to do the decoction. It doesn't tell us the strength of the decoction. I don't know what 50 to 100 milliliters of bark decoction actually means. I mean, normally a decoction is just boiling of the herb in water and then drinking straining it and drinking the tea afterwards, the decoction afterwards. But in Chinese medicine, we're kind of specific exactly how decoctions are made, though there's definitely some leeway, and practitioners often have their own ways to do it. But 50 to 100 milliliters is not much from a Chinese point of view. In Chinese, we often say, like, take 3 cups, boil it until it's down to 2 cups, and then do it again until it's down to 1 cup. So you have 3 cups, and then take 1 cup 3 times a day, or something along those lines. So 100 milliliters is a lot less than is a half a cup. So that seems like a small amount, but I don't know. We do formulas too, rather than just having a single herb too. So maybe that's about right. Siddiqui gives a less useful but more accurate summary of dosage. Boswellia is generally taken as a capsule, tablet, or its bark decoction orally. The recommended dosage is based on historical practice or available trials. Presently, it is not clear that the optimal dose is to balance safety and efficacy. The manufacturing of Boswellia products varies from one product to the other, and this makes it even more difficult for standardization to happen. Continuing with dosage and preparation, Healthline, which is usually a pretty good source. It's a little basic and scientific, but it's researched. So Healthline says, general dosing guidelines suggest taking 300 to 500 milligrams by mouth 2 to 3 times a day. The dosage may need to be higher for IBD, so that's inflammatory bowel disorders, disease. Frawley and Ladd, that's the one of the Ayurvedic texts, say dosing is 250 milligrams to 1 gram of purified powder. Sodhi says 2 to 3 grams of gum resin, 1 to 1.5 milliliters of oil. So he talks a little bit about the essential oil. And I love this, 56 to 112 milliliters of bark decoction. There's got to be some sort of traditional measurement that refers to, because those are odd numbers, 56 to 112. And 300 milligrams 3 times per day of a standardized extract of 50% boswellic acid. We're going to find boswellic acids, there's actually several of them, are probably the active ingredient in the ingredients in this particular herb. Quality, the easyayurveda.com website discusses the quality of Boswellia serrata. According to Modern System, 4 grades of gum resin are available. Superfine grade is translucent, very light yellow in color, free from bark and other impurities. Qualities 1, I think it means first quality, is brownish yellow, less translucent, and free from bark and impurities. Qualities 2 is brownish, semi-translucent, and may have some impurities. And qualities 3 is dark brown, opaque, and with impurities. So Chinese medical action. So as mentioned initially, the Chinese herb Ruxiang is a different species. That's Boswellia cardii, BMNW. However, it appears they have similar actions, and I was unable to find anything specific about Chinese properties of Boswellia serrata. Ruxiang is acrid and bitter and warm, and enters the heart, liver, and spleen. Its functions seem pretty similar to our herb today. It invigorates the blood and promotes the movement of qi. Those are the sort of things we would do to treat arthritis and inflammation and things like that. So it makes sense that it would be similar. Relaxes the sinews, invigorates the channels, and alleviates pain, and reduces swelling and generates flesh. Again, very similar to a lot of these traditional functions that we're actually discussing. So even if Ruxiang, the functions is not, Ruxiang is a different herb, it's pretty similar, I think, in how this herb would be viewed from a Chinese medical point of view. Comparisons and combinations. There weren't any direct comparisons for this herb in our literature searches. I just couldn't find anything that said, hey, this herb is like this, or this herb is better for this than that herb, but that herb is better for this. I didn't find any of that stuff, and I usually do, so it's a little surprising that I didn't. However, there were several combinations discussed. Sodi says Boswellia's effects are enhanced when it is combined with Zingiber officinale. In Indian or Hindi, it's shunti or ginger. This is ginger. Now, I don't know if it's fresh ginger or dry ginger. In Chinese medicine, that makes a difference. But it just says combined with ginger. Generally, I think it's probably a powder, so it's probably dried, but there you go. So the effects are enhanced when it's combined with ginger, curcuma longum or curcuma, and in modern Ayurveda, bromelain is also added in. He also commonly combines it with Withania somnifera, which is ashwagandha, calling all of these herbs his basic Boswellia protocol, and he does use it. It's an important protocol for him. Planet Ayurveda, which is another website, emphasizes the combination of Boswellia serrata and curcumin, especially for rheumatoid arthritis. So that curcuma and Boswellia combination seems to be a very common combination. So Maja asks, have you tried superfine grade powder of Boswellia, and can you recommend an herbal brand that is high quality? I cannot. I gotta say, one of the reasons why I'm doing these herbs of the world is because I don't use a lot of the herbs of the world. I want to use more, or at least understand them, because I get asked questions all the time from my patients, like, what do you think of this and what do you think of that? And I just want to know. So that's why I do these, is to kind of look at that. I've done several Aboriginal herbs. I love that because I lived in Australia for 4 years. That's where I went to medical school. I lived and worked in Aboriginal communities. So I wanted to know, I tried very hard. I did learn a little bit while I was there, but it's in 4 years, like you're not even going to be able to you're not even going to be trusted for 5-10 years, let alone 4 years, and learn a lot of this stuff. So to me, it's a lot about how I'm learning these things, and so I don't know what's high quality. I don't know Indian producers. I don't know which ones are better than others. So unfortunately, I just don't have any answer for you at this point. So, but it's knowledge that I'm putting away, and I have a store of, so that if I want to do it in the future, it's there. So with all of these. All right, let's move on to the contents. So Siddiqui says, the resinous part of Boswellia serrata contains monoterpenes, specifically alpha-theugene, diterpenes, macrocyclic diterpenoids such as incensol oxide, isoincensol oxide, a diterpene alcohol serratol, triterpenes such as alpha and beta amarins, pentacyclic triterpenic acids. These are the boswellic acids that we mentioned earlier. Tetracyclic triterpenic acids, and this includes tyrosol, 8,24-diene, 21-oic acids. That's a mouthful for you. So lots of different things there. And Badal and Delgado, this is a textbook that I have called Pharmacognosy, Fundamentals, Applications, and Strategies. You can see it's a big textbook if you're watching this. It's a big textbook on pharmacology, which is basically understanding the pharmacology of herbs. And so it's an interesting textbook, and it's written, I think, and published in India. So it's got a lot of Indian herbs, and it does here too. And they say several constituents of Boswellia serrata have anti-inflammatory effects, though acetyl-11 keto-beta boswellic acid appears to be the most active. So as I mentioned, the boswellic acids tend to be sort of the active ingredients here. They're not the only ones, but the main ones. So let's talk about the science. So Citiquy, which was a review article on Boswellia serrata, summarizes several studies, and we'll break those down into what they do. Anti-inflammatory effects stem from several constituents and mechanisms. Boswellic acids were found to inhibit the synthesis of pro-inflammatory enzyme 5-lipoxygenase, or 5-LO, including 5-hydroxy-eicosanoic tetranoic acid, or 5-HETE, and leukotriene B4, LTB4, which cause bronchoconstriction, chemotaxis, and increased vascular permeability. Those things are not going to be useful. Remember, we said it can be useful for asthma. This would be the reason. If it can block that enzyme, then it probably will help asthma and other inflammatory conditions. Other anti-inflammatory plant constituents, such as quercetin, also block this enzyme, but they do so in a more general fashion as an antioxidant, whereas boswellic acid seemed to be a specific inhibitor of 5-LO, or that 5-lipoxygenase. A clinical trial with an N of 70, so not a huge study, but it is statistically valid, conducted by Ray Chaudhuri and co-workers in India, has shown that the extract of the plant Boswellia serrata can reduce pain and considerably improve knee joint functions, in some cases providing relief even within 7 days. Ray Chaudhuri and her colleagues described their study as the first to evaluate the efficacy of the extract enriched with a form of boswellic acid on osteoarthritis. Sodhi discusses several areas of pharmacological activity. He says this herb is anti-arthritis. He discusses several clinical trials with an N of 75, an N of 175, an N of 90, with positive results in treating arthritis with Boswellia serrata. Anti-inflammatory discusses animal studies showing the herb's effects on 5-lipoxygenase. Gastrointestinal effects, he discusses a small study, N equals 6, so not a very good study, more of a pilot study. Small study of juvenile Crohn's patients, and a study without subject details treating chronic diarrhea. Talks about it being anti-asthmatic. He discusses a study of 40 asthma patients and a meta-analysis. Meta-analysis tend to be the strongest studies around. Immunomodulatory, so it helps the immune system. Animal studies showed decreased hypersensitivity reactions. So animal studies doesn't mean it happens in humans, but it points to the possibility. It can be anti-tumor. So this goes to Ralph asked earlier if it's used for cancer. So here is an anti-tumor function. It says some in vitro studies show effects supporting anti-tumor activity, while a German study with an N of 44 showed significant reduction in brain swelling after radiotherapy, so radiation therapy, and Boswellia supplementation. So it may have some anti-cancer effects, but it's not its main use, at least in Ayurvedic systems and traditional uses. Neuronal, it may help neurodegenerative disorders. Maybe. Dermatological, a small study N equals 15 showed reduction of photoaging of facial skin when a topical Boswellia cream was used. Maybe analgesic. There have been several animal studies showing analgesic activity. Maybe antifungal. The essential oil showed antifungal activity on a plant fungus, but human pathogens do not show any activity. So probably not antifungal, at least not in humans. So that's good there. What about drug-herb interactions? While there may be some cytochrome P450 interactions with the boswellic acids, these do not appear to be significant according to an in vitro study. So Just a little brief in vitro versus in vivo. So in vitro means in glass, in test tubes. So not in the opposite of in vitro is in vivo, which means in life, and that can mean both animals or humans. So in vitro is a step away from is a big step away from humans, and then the humans. Then in vivo animal studies is a step away from humans as well. So this is a couple steps away from humans. So it doesn't appear, and I can't tell you how many in vitro studies on Cytochrome P450 I've seen. And then when they go to actually do it in humans, it has no bearing whatsoever. So I don't think this has any Cytochrome P450 interactions that we need to be aware of in drug-herb interactions. Remember, that's one of the main targets, risk factors for drug-herb interaction. So I don't think there's anything to be super worried about there, but maybe keep an eye on it. Similarly, there appears to be some peak glycoprotein inhibition, but does not appear to be significant enough to cause issues with other drugs. So while there is some, especially in vitro, some inhibition going on, but it's minor, it's a very small part of the constituents, and it had very minor activity, so I don't think it's going to be an actual issue in humans at all. And the American Herbal Product Association's Botanical Safety Handbook, which I love as just a resource for safety. It's a really good book. Puts this herb in interaction class A, which is their highest, best interaction class, and it means herbs for which no clinically relevant interactions are expected. So that's basically what I found when I did the research directly. So are there concerns about this herb? So according to Sodi, Boswellia has been well tolerated in most studies. However, some people experience stomach discomfort, including nausea, acid reflux, or heartburn, a feeling of fullness, stomach pain, or diarrhea. Irritation of the skin has been reported from a multi-herb product containing Boswellia. Take that with a grain of salt because there's lots of other herbs in it. It could be any of the other herbs causing it as well. And care should be taken not to exceed the recommended dosage. And finally, Frawley and Ladd, who did the other book on Ayurvedic herbs that I use, says there are no noted precautions, so nothing that you need to be particularly worried about. Having said that, that website, easyayurveda.com, says shalakai extract capsules cause gastric irritation. Hence, people with sensitive stomach or gastritis find it difficult to take the capsule. However, as per my experience, this is the experience of the author of the website. As per my experience, when compared to Guggulu capsule, so remember Guggulu is Google, which is frankincense. That is the more traditional frankincense. And in Chinese medicine, that's the Ruxiang. The gastric irritation found with Boswellia is less and is better tolerated than Guggulu capsules. Such people can take it just 5 minutes after food to lessen the gastric irritation. Shalakai capsule can be taken during lactation and in children, and seek medical guidance for its use during pregnancy. We're going to see that's an important part there. They continue, the frankincense oil or the essential oil can be taken orally, but make sure that the essential oil is genuine and not synthetically produced, chemically scented, or perfumed material. While applying externally, just put a drop on the forearm skin and rub and watch for any adverse allergic reaction. If you find any, consult your doctor immediately. The other website we've looked at, Planet Ayurveda, says it stimulates the flow of blood in the uterus and pelvic regions. Hence, improper usage may adversely affect the menstrual cycle. It may also induce miscarriage in expecting mothers, and it can also cause nausea, vomiting, acid reflux, and diarrhea and skin rashes. So very similar to what we heard before. Healthline. So this is a more Western medical sort of approach to this. Healthline says Boswellia may stimulate blood flow in the uterus and pelvis. It can accelerate menstrual flow and may induce miscarriage in pregnant women. Other possible side effects of Boswellia include nausea, acid reflux, diarrhea, skin rashes. Boswellia extract may also interact with medications, including ibuprofen, aspirin, and other non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs. So, I'm very keen on looking at drug-herb interactions. As you know, that's sort of my bailiwick. A lot of my book is about that. And so I'm always looking for those. And I couldn't find any no interactions of Boswellia serrata in the literature. So I didn't see these drug-herb interactions actually in the literature. And often what happens with these is someone who is quote unquote an expert says, hey, there may be some issues here. And if you look at Boswellia serrata as an anti-inflammatory, which is its main use in Ayurvedic medicine, then you can also kind of go, okay, well, maybe this will also interact with other medicines that are doing similar things, like the non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs. And it has, some potential overlap in how those work. So there can be some interactions, but that doesn't necessarily mean there will be. Just because theoretically there are, doesn't mean there actually will be in humans. So I'd put that under the rubric of what I call expert opinion, which is the lowest level of evidence for drug-herb interactions, or just in general for any study. So I'd be cautious. I don't think there's any concerns with the NSAIDs, but certainly you have a little bit of a warning here on that. WebMD, which is also a very medicalized resource for this, for herbs and supplements, they say, when taken by mouth, Boswellia serrata is likely safe for most adults. Boswellia serrata extract has been used safely in doses up to 1,000 milligrams daily for up to 6 months. It usually doesn't cause major side effects. Well, I think you can say that about everything. But some people have reported stomach pain, nausea, diarrhea, headache, heartburn, and itching. Pregnancy and breastfeeding, Boswellia serrata is likely safe when used in amounts commonly found in foods. Don't know if these are commonly found in foods, but there isn't enough reliable information to know if Boswellia serrata is safe to use in larger amounts as medicine when pregnant or breastfeeding. Stay on the safe side and avoid use. That's according to WebMD. And finally, there is that American Herbal Product Association's Botanical Safety Handbook, which I just think is so well done and well researched and balanced. It doesn't take anything too far in an extreme. So and they put this herb in safety class 2B, and basically say this is class 2B means herbs not to be used during pregnancy. So I think again we have the reminder that this is probably not the best herb for pregnancy to use during pregnancy. And that is it for today. We started our discussion today by talking about the business planning excuses. And from there, we did our deep dive into Boswellia serrata, or Indian frankincense, an important Ayurvedic herb for treating inflammation and other conditions. While generally considered to be safe, we should be careful when used during pregnancy. And overall, another interesting herb. In our next episode, we will be exploring an important, it's a quite important and interesting Chinese herb, Da Huang, or Ray radix et rhizoma, or rhubarb root, or rhizome. This herb is relatively commonly used herb in the Chinese medical subcategory of purgatives under the category of downward draining herbs, and can be used in a wide variety of conditions. Some conditions you're just like, why is this being used here? And as usual, we will be exploring something a little different. So please join us for this intriguing episode. See you in 2 weeks. And I just would like to say thank you very much. If you like this podcast, please do us a huge favor. Give us a 5-star rating in your favorite podcast app. Thank you. And remember, you can get CEUs and NCCOM PDAs, that's continuing education units, and National Certification Commission of Acupuncture and Medicine Professional Development Activities at www.integrativemedicinecouncil.org. That's Integrative Medicine Council, COUNCIL.org. And if you use the code SH20OFF, so Spurbs Herbs SH 20 off, you can get 20% off any number of those CEUs and PDAs. And you can always get in touch with me at Dr. Greg at spurbsherbs.com or at our website, www.spurbsherbs.com. That's SPERBSHERBS herbology.com. And as usual, I have a pretty good bibliography. Thank you very much.
Herbs, herbs.
The proceeding was presented by Dr. Greg Swerber. We would like to thank Janelle for all her support and everybody else who contributed to this program.
Janelle.
Timothy
Nick
Dobbins,
Rogers.
Campbell.